Hello, dear viewers. I am a global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the globe. Today, I want to talk about uh, India and about the recent, um, about the Prime Minister's security threat that occurred late earlier this week, where his motorcade was blocked by protesters in the state of Punjab in on the way to the district of Ferozpur. And I want to talk about the legal ramifications of this, of whether or not president's rule under Article 356 of the Constitution can be imposed on the state of Punjab. So, for that, let me just uh, take you through what the article itself says. So here is Article 356 of the Constitution. I will just go through a few of the clauses, not all of it. This article gives provisions in case of failure of constitutional machinery in a state. If the president, on receipt of report from the governor of the state or otherwise, is satisfied that a situation has arisen in which the government of the state cannot be carried on in accordance with with the provisions of this constitution, the president may be by proclamation assume to himself all or any of the functions of the government of the state and all or any of the powers vested in or exercisable by the governor or any body or authority in the state other than the legislature of the state. Declare that the powers of the legislature of the state shall be exercisable by or under the authority of parliament. So, as we can see here, uh, Article 356 can be imposed if the governor of the state gives a report to the president, or otherwise, even if the governor has not given such a report, if a situation has arisen in which the state cannot be carried on in accordance with the constitution, then the president can issue this proclamation. And in this proclamation, he can assume to himself all or any function of the government of the state and all or of the powers vested in or exercisable by the governor or any body or authority in the state other than the legislature of the state. And he can also have the parliament impose laws on the state that normally can only be imposed by the legislature or passed legislature of the state. And he can make such incidental and consequential provisions as appear to the president to be necessary or desirable for giving effect to the objects of proclamation. So, in this case, to understand whether uh, the president can remove the government of Punjab due to this recent incident, we have to go to how this article has been interpreted by the Supreme Court in the case of S.R. Bomay versus Union of India, 1994. The Supreme Court laid down certain guidelines so as to prevent the misuse of Article 356 of the Constitution. And this, I'll just tell you what the relevant ones are. Um, First, the center should give a warning to the state in a time period of 1 week to reply. Now, the center government, as of now, has not given a warning to the state to that it will impose president's rule unless the constitutional machinery can work in the state. It has asked the state government to give a report on the reason for the security lapse, but it hasn't given a warning that it will impose president's rule. So, since this is one of the first conditions, this hasn't happened. Article 356 can't be invoked yet. Once that is done, then other factors need to be taken into account. For example, the majority enjoyed by the Council of Ministers should be tested on the floor of the House. Before, once the advice is given to the president by the COM, then the government should have a confidence test in the lower house where it must prove its majority. The court now cannot question the advice tendered by the COMs to the president, but it can question material behind that led to the satisfaction of the president. They can consider only is there any material behind the proclamation. Without any material, without any reason, the proclamation cannot be given. Is material relevant? This means that for whatever objective that the proclamation has been passed, is material that was used to come to that proclamation relevant to that objective? And was there any malified use of power? This is self-explanatory. Um, Under Article 356, Clause 3, it is the limitation on the powers of the President. Hence, the President shall not take any irreversible action until the proclamation is approved by the Parliament. He shall not dissolve the Assembly. It's justified only when there is a breakdown of constitutional machinery and not administrative machinery. Here, this is interesting. It's not administrative machinery that's has to be breakdown, it's constitutional machinery. Now, the Supreme Court said when the following situations that president's rules can be imposed when it would be proper to do so. Uh, for the current situation that we're in, I think that we have to look at this fourth point, where a constitutional direction of central government is disregarded by the state government. In this case, the central government gave a direction to the state government to provide security to the prime minister in his visit to the state of Punjab. Now, the police in Punjab did travel with the prime minister, did create a path for him, but failed to provide security uh, because of the breach in the security. That's a failure, but that's not the same as a disregard. Uh, for that, we need to go into the fifth point, where internal subversion, where, for example, a government is deliberately acting against the constitution and the law or is fomenting a violent revolt. Physical breakdown, where the government willfully refuses to discharge its constitutional obligations, endangering the security of the state. These 2 points are very important because if the Khalistan terrorists and activists in Punjab are colluding with the Congress government in Punjab, and the state government in Punjab is deliberately acting against the constitution by supporting separatism, then this would count as internal subversion. And this would also count as physical breakdown, where the government willfully refuses to discharge its constitutional obligations, endangering the security of the state. Now, uh, what happened in this incident was that the prime minister was supposed to travel by helicopter to a location in Punjab, but his travel plans changed due to poor weather, and so he chose to go by car. And so his motorcade went, and they had informed the Punjab government and the Punjab police. And on the way, his motorcade was blocked by protesters who were in the part of the motorcade and weren't allowing it to go through. And why I think this is internal subversion? Because Congress, especially certain members like Navjot Singh Sidhu in the Congress in the Punjab government, are tacitly supporting Khalistanis. And so this would count as internal subversion. Now, physical breakdown hasn't occurred because the Punjab government hasn't deliberately revolted against the government, central government, but it has refused to discharge its constitutional obligations. For example, its obligation to protect the Prime Minister of India, which endangers the security of the state, So yeah, this is one point where it should be considered as a valid reason to impose president's rule. So back to uh, what I was saying. Should president's rule be imposed? It depends on the final report that the both the state government gives to the central government and the central government does for itself under the Ministry of Home Affairs. If they can prove that there was, if the Ministry of Home Affairs can prove that the Punjab government deliberately acted to create a security threat for the Prime Minister, then that would be inciting a revolt against the central government, which is unconstitutional and shows that they are no longer uh, following their constitutional obligations and should be dismissed. So, in that case, if that's what the report of the MHA says, then I think they should. If it doesn't, if it says that this was caused by incompetence, then I don't think that president's rule should be imposed. I think then just dismissals of the officers, both police and government officers, who were responsible for the security breach, um, they should be dismissed or suspended at the least. So yeah, that's what my view is on this issue. If you want to see more videos related to this subject about nationalism in India, click here. If you want to see my previous video, click here. If you want to see my sources for this video, click in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.